Hey everybody, Cole here with Classic Mini DIY. Now today I thought I might spice it up a little bit with this Q&A, and I think I'm going to do a little drive around in the car since I have it back together and answer your questions as I'm driving the Mini. Now to calm any worries that you guys might have, I am not going to be reading and driving. I am only going to be answering these questions while I'm driving. I'll be stopping, looking at these questions, getting back to you, and then answering the question one by one. This is a little bit different format. If you guys like it, let me know. If you think that you would prefer it in the house and the way I did it before, tell me, and we'll do it that way next time. Now the first question I had was from a gentleman named Neil Ryan, and he has a question about his Mini. Whenever he fills up the car, it smells a lot like gasoline, more so than any kind of standard old car would smell like, because these cars tend to smell a little rich anyway. But when he fills it up, it starts to smell a lot like gasoline. Now the thing that's most likely causing that is a compromised vent tube. Now on the back of your fuel tank, you have a small vent hose. Now generally that vent hose runs out the top of your fuel tank and then down out the hole where the fuel tank actually goes to feed the motor. And if you're smelling a lot of gas in your car, most likely that vent tube isn't doing anything at all, or it's got a small leak in it, something like that, or it's not even venting out of the car. Now, it's a really easy thing to fix. It just is a small clear piece of tube, and that small piece of tube gets run from the top of that fuel tank all the way out the bottom of your trunk or your boot if you're in the UK. Now, the next question I have is from Tristan. It's about the subframe bushings and whether or not you can fit those without removing the subframe from the car. Now, I have to be honest with you, I've not actually tried attaching those without removing the subframe. When I put those bushings on this car, I actually had the subframe out when I was doing the full restoration, so it was kind of something that I did all at the same time when it was apart already. So I would say it's probably possible to do two at a time, but there's a lot of different components attached to that rear subframe that get in the way of you just removing it or kind of tilting it down. You have the brake lines, you have the fuel lines, you have your emergency brake line. All of these are going to make it relatively difficult for you to just remove it a little bit and just get those bushings in. But I'm not saying it's impossible. I'm just saying I don't really know for sure the answer to that question. Now the next question I have is from Mike Vaccaro, and it's actually a two-part question. So the first question is around whether or not you can run 10-inch wheels on a later model Mini with larger disc brakes. And the short answer to that is really no. You have to do a brake conversion to a smaller disc. The 8-inch and larger discs are just too big for a 10-inch wheel. The inside diameter of that wheel is just too small, so you do have to do a brake conversion, but the brake conversion that you're probably going to want to do is a 7.5-inch disc conversion, because if you go down to a 7-inch disc, it's not really any better than the stock front drums that were on this car when it was first produced. So the kind of sweet spot for that is the 4-pot brake caliper system. 7 Mini Parts sells it, Mini Sport sells it. There's all sorts of different places that you can get this, but it's just a brake conversion kit that has 7.5-inch discs and the 4-pot braking system, which is what's on my car actually. And I can say with years of experience on those brakes that they are wonderful. I love them. It was one of the best upgrades that I ever did to this car. Now the second part of his question was around painting my car myself, and have I ever done it? And I have actually done that myself. I spent a great deal of time prepping. I wanted to do the front bumper as kind of a stopgap measure so that I didn't have to paint the whole front end of the car for a little while, but it wouldn't continue to rust. So I spent probably 3 or 4 days of prep on this car. I sanded it down, I primed it with an automotive primer, and then I sanded that down, put a little bit more on, sanded it down. Man, it took forever. And then the paint I actually used was a rattle can system. It was a 2-stage system. It was pretty cool. It had 2 tops technically, one on the top and one on the bottom. And what you did is you opened the bottom cap and you activated the hardener, and that mixed with the paint. It was actually a combined paint and hardener, and then all I had to do was add the clear coat afterwards. They do actually sell those rattle cans with both the hardener and the clear coat in them, and I probably would do it again if I was looking to do something that's not really like super fancy. If I wanted to get a really nice paint job, I'd still bring it to a paint and body shop. Now the next 2 questions I have are from Andrew Morrison, one of which being, what are the best engine mods to do to this car? Now, I've done actually quite a few engine mods on my car, and I would say one of the easiest mods to do on your car is to change out the exhaust manifold and then add a larger carburetor. That's probably one of the highest power to price ratios. There are a lot of different other mods you can do to the car, like a fast road cam or any sort of other camshaft upgrade, which would also be a really great modification, but it does involve you pulling the motor, which makes things a little bit more difficult. The reason I would go with that stage 1 kit, the one where you change just the exhaust manifold and the carburetor, is because it's pretty simple. You can leave the motor in the car. It doesn't require any sort of special consideration. You just gotta get new components. It's probably the closest to bolt-on that you'll ever get in this car. Past that, there are other mods you can do, like putting on a larger exhaust system past the exhaust manifold. You can do something like the camshaft, like I mentioned before. Then you get into even bigger mods, like changing the valve system and making the valves bigger so you get more air in your motor, or you port the head, or you get a stage 2 or 3 head, which would allow more flow, which would complement the other mods with the exhaust system. Now, the other question that Andrew had was around what the exact color code of my car is, and I think I got this question from a couple other people as well. And the short answer to that is the color is called Tahiti blue, but the Tahiti blue color code is kind of funny. It's different between here and the UK and other places in the world, which I found out when I painted my car. I actually didn't want it as light as it is right now, but when the paint shop mixed the color, I told them the exact color code, and they mixed it, painted the car, and it ended up being way lighter. And the reason that is because Tahiti blue here is what was used on the MGs that were sold in the US, and then there's Tahiti blue overseas, which is a little bit darker. It's kind of more of a midnight blue. But either way, I ended up just sticking with it and rolling with the car the way it was, and now I'm really happy with this blue. I don't think that I would have wanted the darker blue anyways. This one stands out a little bit more, and it's just got that kind of pop that the others don't have. The color codes that I have for the car should be popping up on the screen around me here somewhere. Those are what I found as the paint codes, but take that with a grain of salt because of the kind of issues that I have with my car. Make sure that if you do get your car painted that color, you bring it to the body shop and you have them do a sample first and make sure that the color is the right color for you. Next question is from Bradley. It's about the window regulator and how to fit that. And if I'm being completely honest with you, my car does not have window regulators, and it's not a job that I've actually done before, so I don't really know how to do it. I would check out Total Car Reviews. I think that he's fitted some window regulators, or he's going to have to soon. His channel should be popping up in the corner here. I really like his channel. I can't remember if he did actually do a window regulator, so Thomas on Total Car Reviews, sorry if I misspoke, but I would check out his channel. He's got some good content. Now, the next question I have is from Ozmaniac, and he asked me why my workbench is so tidy, and I've actually been asked that a lot. People always ask me, like, why is your workbench so tidy? Is it because you never do any work on the car? Is it because you never bring your tools out, you never work on stuff? And the short answer to that is most definitely not the case. The reason that my workbench is so tidy is because I actually worked as a diesel mechanic for a short period of time for Carolina Tractor. That's a Caterpillar. And one of the most important things that they taught us is that you always clean up your tools after you work. And the reason they taught us that is because, one, you were working in a shared space, but two, having a clean workshop is always going to breed better work because you're going to be constantly working in a clean workshop, and the products that you're working on are always going to end up cleaner. And those habits just kind of carried over into my own personal workshop, and that is the kind of long answer to why I keep my workshop so tidy. And I would encourage you guys to do the same if you are really into working on cars. It's going to produce a lot better work on your car. All right, so the next question I have is, how do you mount a 1275 to an engine stand? And I'm assuming what you mean is an engine stand used for working on your car's motor while it's out of the car. Now, there's nothing special about the 1275 specifically. All of the motors should be able to mount to an engine stand the same way I did it here. And this is what worked for me. I'm not sure if this is like the technical way. So a lot of people will mount it on like the timing side, or other people will mount it on the flywheel side. But I actually mounted it to the center of the front of the block where your alternator or your generator mounts. I've got a picture that should be showing up here in one of the corners, and this is the way that I mounted my motor to the engine stand, and it worked out great. It allowed me to rotate that around, work on it, But I would say that once you start to get to the transmission and those parts of the motor, once you start putting those onto the motor, I would likely transition that off of the engine stand, simply because I don't know that those alternator mounting holes are going to be strong enough to actually hold the motor up with the transmission safely over a long period of time. Now, before we go any farther, let's go ahead and do this episode's subscriber showcase.
Cole, just want to say Merry Christmas and thanks for featuring my car on your customer showcase thing, whatever you name it. So yeah, so here's the Mini. The engine's in, I'll give you a quick walk around of how it's done, and I just want to thank you for featuring me and thanks for getting involved in my collaboration last week. So hopefully some of you will recognise who I am. Apologies for the Santa hat and the Christmas jumper, but let's give the car a complete walk around. So the engine's gone in, we've got a new rocker cover to go in yet. I snapped the fan, putting it in, I don't know if you can see it, it's missing a blade there, so we've got a new fan to go in. But as you can see, it's all been totally restored and repainted. We did used to have a sunroof, and it had some damage here, so we had to get another roof off another Mini, chop it and weld it on. So it's now a car without a sunroof, and it also used to be blue. You can check my channel to see the journey. It's a bit messy in there, but just to hide the mess, it's all been soundproofed with silent coat. And then I've also put a complete new wiring loom in, steering wheel's going, whole new headliner fitted by myself. May not be to some people's tastes, but I gave it a go, first one ever. New petrol, well, old petrol tank re-powder coated. I've braided the loom in this so it looks a bit neater. So all that's got to go in. Battery. I've also got a stainless manifold that needs to go on down here, so we're going to try and get that on today, and it's going to have a full stainless exhaust through the back, new alloy radiator, a few tatty bits like this will get touched up before the engine does finally start running, but yeah. Once again, thanks Cole. I just want to say cheers for featuring me, and I hope to see more of your videos, and I want to wish everyone that's seen my car and you yourself a very Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. So thanks very much and peace out. Oh, and one thing I do need to say is in Cole's way, send in your car and motor on.
Thanks Thomas, and Happy Christmas to you as well. So with that, let's get back to the Q&A. Alright, so the next question I have is from Kiyoki Cooper, and it's around the points and your condenser on your distributor. And how can you tell if that's not working properly, or if you need to set that gap with a feeler gauge and make sure that that is actually running correctly? And generally you can tell when your distributor is causing your problems when the motor's not firing in a smooth fashion, or if you're getting these kind of like backfires or misfires. Generally that happens when a spark's not reaching the cylinder because either the distributor is not making it fire, or the distributor is making it fire too early or too late. And if I'm being completely honest with you guys, I'm a firm believer of implementing kind of newer technology into these cars to make them run a little bit better and make them a little bit more reliable. I think that comes from me being a web developer and me being in the technology world already. So one of the things I did with my car, which is not a full electronic ignition conversion system, I did not want to spend at the time $350, $400 on a new distributor. So what I did instead is I found the magnetic point conversion. So what that does is it actually removes the point system and the whole gapping and everything that is required in your distributor. And you can do it to just about any distributor that's out there. The kit usually costs around 30 to 80 bucks to convert your distributor, and I have to tell you, it is one of the best things you can do to your car. It removes the distributor as a point of failure with those points and that gapping, which means that when you're driving in the rain or when there's moisture potentially in there, you don't have to do anything weird like wrapping your distributor in a plastic bag anymore. It also means that you get a reliable fire every time because it's using electromagnetic sensors. And so a picture of that should be popping up around my face somewhere, and it'll kind of give you an idea how that works. And I'll post a link to this upgrade in the comment section below. Usually you can find them on Amazon or eBay. I think 7 Mini Parts actually sells it too. So definitely a worthwhile upgrade if you're thinking you're going to drive the car in the rain at all. All right, so the last question I have is from Rafael Meneses. He has a question talking about how much positive camber he has on his car, and that he bought some lower adjustable arms and it's still off by a lot, and that you're mentioning that there's a lot of play after you replace the front wheel bearings and ball joints. Generally speaking, there should not be any change to alignment after you replace wheel bearings, the spindle, and those parts that you mentioned. I'd be concerned if you have a lot of positive camber after you did the wheel bearings and all that, only because if the wheel bearings aren't set properly, when the car gets set down, it might be creating an additional load on those wheels that's kind of pressing them out. And then it might also be related to those ball joints, the top and the bottom. Make sure that those are really seated in the lower arm and the top arm of the suspension. It just seems a little unusual to me that that would be causing those problems for you. If everything down there is tightened to spec and it's all seated properly, if you change the wheel size at the same time, you might also see a little bit of unusual alignment, but I would imagine if you went from a 13-inch to like a 12 or a 10, it would be negative camber. You would see the wheels inwards. Not a lot, not this much, but just for illustration's sake. But generally speaking, the pieces that control your camber and toe are the bottom arms. So you have your lower control arms on the bottom, and then your tie rods that are coming from the front body of the car or the front of the subframe. Those are going to control how big your camber is. But before you go adjusting any of that, make sure that you verify the wheel bearing's good. Make sure that you verify the ball joints are mounted properly and that the spindles all look good. And then move on to those adjustment pieces. And then if you're still stumped, I'd strongly recommend just bringing it to an alignment shop. Most alignment shops are going to be able to manage aligning this car. It's not some sort of complex tooling. It's very simple. It's very straightforward, and it's similar to the way cars are still. So that is always an option as well. And with that wraps up the Q&A session this time. I didn't actually get a whole lot of questions, unlike the first Q&A, which I got a lot of different questions from you guys. So the next Q&A should be happening in the spring sometime. Start thinking about those questions. If you have some random things you want to talk about on the Mini, feel free to post them early if you want me to go ahead and answer them. I usually reply to all your comments. But if you have questions about the workshop, the Mini, my friend's Minis, my golf, my wife, and the things that she does in the channel and her blog, feel free to ask whatever you want. I may or may not answer it. I'm not saying that I'll answer any questions that you guys ask. But also don't forget we have some custom t-shirts that we have for sale right now. You should see a link popping up on the top here. It's also in the description below. Those are going to be available until the end of the year, and then we're going to be releasing some new designs and some new shirts. So get them while you can. Those are limited time, and all the proceeds that come from those shirts go straight back into the channel for filming equipment for episodes like this where I'm in my car, for engine modifications and tools to help you guys learn how to work on your Minis. So until the next video, motor on.